Now, when you were starting out as a writer, you were a black, impoverished homosexual. You must have said to yourself, gee, how disadvantaged can I get?
Oh, no, I thought I hit the jackpot.
Oh, great.
Even at its time of publication, 6 years before the end of segregation in the United States, Giovanni's Room was a highly controversial and brave book.
But when you wrote Giovanni's Room a long time ago, that was quite a brave book to bring out, wasn't it? It was about love, it was about homosexual, but it was about love. But you deliberately put in homosexual love, presumably.
Its first manuscript, sent by James Baldwin to his American publishers, was rejected, and the author was advised to ban it, reasoning that the book's central themes of homosexuality would alienate Baldwin's newly found black and white middle-class audiences. After the critical success of Go Tell It to the Mountains, his first novel.
My baby was called Giovanni's Room, eventually. And he finished it and sent it to his agent, who gave it to Knopf. And wouldn't you know, I was on vacation when it came in, when the manuscript came in, and the two editors who had worked on Go Tell It read it, and I guess they were scared. They were scared about this. It was homosexuality was the theme, and that was not on the books in those days.
And angered Baldwin would go on to send the manuscript to an English publisher who would agree and, luckily for all of us, publish the book. Born in Harlem, in New York, during an incredibly tumultuous time for the African-American Negro, Baldwin, like many other expatriates, immigrated to seek asylum in Paris in November 11, 1948.
It was a matter of life or death. You can't turn your back in America long enough to write a book or to find out who you are.
Paris offered a freedom for Baldwin to explore his sexuality and exist as a black man that America did
Comes
not.
as a great shock around the age of 5 or 6 or 7 to discover that the flag to which you have pledged allegiance, along with everybody else, has not pledged allegiance to you.
Giovanni's Room, just like many of his other novels, is set in Paris, following a young man, David, who, just like Baldwin, immigrates to Paris to try and find himself, and to run away from his bickering aunt and alcoholic father, two people who, much to his chagrin, our protagonist is slowly turning into. David is running away from his past, a past that includes him sleeping with a childhood friend and swearing that he will never sleep with boys again, a past that seems to follow him wherever he goes.
There's something fantastic in the spectacle I now present to myself of having run so far, so hard, across the ocean even, only to find myself brought up short once more before the bulldog.
The story starts in the south of France with David readying himself to take the morning train back to Paris. His lover Giovanni is to face the guillotine the following morning, and his fiancée Ella has left him to go back to America. David thinks back to the night when he met Giovanni. He was on his last dime and went out to seek an old friend, Jacques, to borrow a few francs. Jacques is an older gay man David has been leading on and teasing. I knew something else, that Jacques' vaunted affections for me was involved with desire. I held my own against this desire by pretending that Jacques and I were friends, by forcing Jacques on pain of humiliation to pretend this. I pretended not to see, although I exploited it. Jacques takes David to a friend's bar, where he, Jacques, tries to talk up a young bartender, Giovanni. And when Giovanni shows him no interest, Jacques abandons him for David to flirt with. They end up going back home, David and Giovanni, and making love, and they begin to see each other. David has an American fiancée, Ella, who left him for Spain to try and figure out if she wants to progress with their marriage. When Ella returns, David abandons Giovanni and moves in with Ella. Giovanni becomes Jacques' boy toy, and then when he falls on harder times, goes back to his old employer, Guillaume, agrees to have sex with him for his job back. After defiling him, Guillaume refuses to give Giovanni work, and so Giovanni kills him. Ella finds out David is bisexual and leaves him too. James Baldwin, in an interview, stated that this was not an homosexual story, but rather a story about a man's inability to love.
It's not about homosexuality at all.
It's about what happens to you if you can't love anybody. It doesn't make any difference whether you can't love a woman, can't love a man, if you can't love anybody, you're dangerous. Because you have no way of learning humility. No way of learning that other people suffer. And no way of learning how to use your suffering and theirs to get from one place to another.
David lacks the ability to love, and it makes him quite selfish and cruel, manifesting in the ways he handles his relationships, both platonic and romantic. The first boy, Joey, he ever slept with, he bullies and tortures.
And when school began again, I picked up with a rougher, older crowd and was very nasty to Joey. And the sadder this made him, the nastier I became. He moved away, at last, out of the neighborhood, away from our school, and I never saw him again.
He keeps Jacques, whom he absolutely despises and holds to a lowly contempt, close so that he can mooch off of him. "You've been very unfair to me," he said. "You've been very dishonest." This time, I did sound sardonic. "I suppose you mean that I would have been fair, would have been honest if I had, you could have been fair to me by despising me a little less." He cheats on Ella with Giovanni and a random sailor. Ella, who is willing to give herself fully to this man, ends up going back to America with a broken heart. And perhaps the greatest betrayal of all, Giovanni. Giovanni is a young Italian bartender who, just like David, is running away from his past. When his first child dies in the womb, Giovanni leaves Italy for Paris, where he meets Guillaume, who gives him a job at his bar in exchange for sexual favors. On the night of meeting Giovanni, Jacques says to David, in what is perhaps the scariest foreshadow of the book, "And that poor boy yonder, who does not know that when he looks at you the way he does, he is putting his head in the lion's mouth." After David and Giovanni start living together, Giovanni withdraws his sexual affections from Guillaume, and he, Guillaume, fires him and publicly accuses him of stealing from the bar. On this very night, David is out having sex with another woman. When he returns home, Giovanni says to him, "If you can't love me, I will die. Before you came, I wanted to die. I have told you this many times. It is cruel to have made me want to live, only to make my death more bloody." When Ella arrives from Spain, David simply disappears without a word, leaving Giovanni in a state of panic. David is fully aware of the predatory nature of Jacques and Guillaume. When talking about the young men Jacques has for cooks, he hints at this. Jacques had not wanted to have supper in his apartment because his cook had run away. His cooks were always running away. He was always getting young boys from the provinces, God knows how, to come up and be cooks. And when first meeting Guillaume, he comments on his grotesqueness. Yet, he abandons Giovanni, who put him up in his little room and worked so that they had money when Giovanni needs him the most. This act of betrayal sends Giovanni right into the arms of Jacques and Guillaume, leading to his eventual execution.
So I didn't have an awful lot of choice. It was something, Giovanni's room comes out of something which tormented and frightened me. The question of my own sexuality. I used to know when I was younger, a great many men, boys, who were so terrified that they might have a homosexual, and they might be bisexual, or they might, want to go to bed with a man. You might be able to fall in love with a man. And they were so frightened of that they could never fall in love with anybody else. They were so frightened of men they couldn't touch women. Giovanni's room comes similar out of that.
Did you also feel that you wanted to get it on the record, your own homosexuality, early?
I don't know if that, well, I don't know if I wanted to get it on the record, but I wanted to confront it. I'm very glad that, that was done, because it also simplified my life in another way, because it meant that I had no secrets. Nobody could blackmail me. You didn't tell me, I told you.